Well, thank you, Lori, for joining me for this conversation. I'm super excited to chat with you today.
Thank you so much, Laura, for having me on. I'm really looking forward to our chat.
Yeah. So just to introduce yourself to our audience, Lori is a Canadian author with her book right here, The Laws of the Universe and the Bible, A Practical Guide to Abundant Living. And this was her first book, and she's working on a second book, which we'll discuss later. She is working out of central Alberta, where she lives with her husband. And she is a paralegal by trade, an artist by talent, and an author by default. She is also a co-owner of an international people development company specializing in workforce management, sales, productivity, and team behavioral science. And so she raised her 4 children with her husband in a non-traditional Christian environment. And she has been an informal student of the Bible for over 40 years now and continues to be inspired by the wisdom it contains as life unfolds. So I'm super excited, Lori, to be sharing this moment with you. And we're going to start talking about your book here, which I've read and I've recommended to a lot of my friends and family, and they've all loved it. And it's #1 on my Amazon must-read book list.
Awesome. Thank you.
It was really great. So my first question for you about this book is, well, where did you learn about the laws of the universe? When did you learn about them? And how that came about? Like, how did it change the way you view the world now? And how it impacted your life, or still impacts your life today?
Okay, so back in 2011, our youngest son, he popular at school, he's smart, I would say he's attractive, and he had this crazy anxiety that totally stumped us all, and he just was basically immobile. So we knew there were answers somewhere out there, and so we sought all the external resources. We Googled, we went to psychologists, we went to the medical doctor, we took courses, and to make a long story short, the answers for him were within himself. And so he had to learn to rethink. He had to change his process of, I guess, just his thought process. And which therefore changes your belief system. And we know that familiar verse in the Bible that says, as a man thinketh, so is he. So he had to create a new version of himself. And then he was able to create his world the way with intention, as opposed to unintentional and like as a victim. So I would say after we learned to tap into this inward flow that God has created for all of humanity. Revelation 22:2 talks about it as being the healing leaves on the tree of life. So God created us. We are all masterpieces, and to think that he never created a way to heal is preposterous, really. So he did provide a way of healing, and it's tapping into that inward flow, and it leads to harmony, the body, all one, mind, body, soul. And the religious world, or I could say in the biblical language, we call it faith. He learned to tap into trusting in the unknown and taking steps forward in faith. And it moved him to a higher level of consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Is that when you started learning about the laws of the universe then, and how they could be applied to him and your lives?
Oh, yes. Yeah. Yeah. So applying the laws of the universe, which God has created, it's, how do I say, the best way to say this is, like, there's the law of love. We read about that in the Bible. There's the law of cause and effect. There is a law of vibration. And to me, the law of vibration is one of the most important things to understand, which is energy, and how our energy works and what we attract into our life based on our energy. And so once we understood that, then we understood how to get out of the pit and to how to increase that vibration, or as the energy world says, increase that level of consciousness.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so one of the laws of the universe is the law of attraction, which is a very well-known law today anyways, and it's been made known by movies, and it's more common knowledge now. Some people still think that it's quite out there, and so how do you think it fits with God's teachings and the Bible?
Okay, so the law of attraction is the same thing as the law of vibration.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to stay out of the sun here, so so sorry if you see me moving around. Yeah, so the law of attraction, and many people are familiar with that by the book called The Secret,
Mm-hmm.
and the movie called The Secret. So I use it. I tend to use the word, the law of vibration, because it helps us understand energy, and then you can understand why you attract what we do in our lives. So how does that intersect with the Bible? Probably the most powerful verse in the Bible to me is Mark 24:11, where Jesus says, "Ask, believe that you have received it, and it shall be yours." So ask, believe that you have received it, and it shall be yours. So that to me is having our what we send out, our words that we send out, having our energy match that,
Mm-hmm.
like our belief system match the words that we say, and then that's how we create.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it shall be yours. So sometimes we tend to dissect Jesus' words, I feel, too much.
Mm-hmm.
And we say, oh, yes, but that's just regarding spiritual things, or that's not regarding natural things. But what I've come to understand through this whole process of healing that we witnessed and were a part of is that I now take Jesus' words literally. And to me, when I can do that, those verses have such deeper meaning for me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Ask and you shall receive. That is faith in itself.
Yes, that in itself is faith.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's so true. So how do you think that can change someone's life? Like learning about the laws of the universe and being able to link that to your belief, your faith, your spirituality, whether here in this case, the Bible. How do you think it can change your life?
Well, the biggest thing is we intentionally learn how to create instead of unintentional. When we unintentionally create, we find ourselves in victimhood. So when we can learn how to rise in that level of bring our level of consciousness to a new level, then we attract better things into our life. Just like the law of attraction, as we rise, we attract
Mm-hmm.
within that same level, and our thoughts are equal to that level. Mm-hmm. So the lower our level of consciousness, the lower our vibration is, and which means that the more unfavorable experiences will attract into our life.
And the opposite is just as true.
Exactly. And the opposite is true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so true. And I have definitely experienced that in my own life. So this is all part of your first book that we have here, and you can order it on Amazon, and I'll share a link with you so that you can get it and read it. It will definitely transform your life for sure. So now, Lori, you are also working on a new book, I heard. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Okay, I can't give my secrets away, but I'm probably about halfway in. And I've had a lot of people come back to me who've read my first book and had said, Lori, can you, with your next book, can you do like assignments for us in the book so that we can practice what we learn? And so I think I'll do that. I haven't added those yet, but I will add some assignments. But it is basically the same thought that you learn to create your outer world by learning how to tap into your inner world. And it's learning of how to raise our level of consciousness so we can attract more favorable experiences into our outer world. And it's just learning how to truly tap into that love and that joy that Jesus intended we would. He said, I want you to have joy. I want you to have abundant life, to experience the joy that I'm experiencing. And the way we do that is we sometimes have to reprogram ourselves from those low-level frequencies and those thoughts, those programs that rerun in our head all the time about who we think we are and what we think is our reality, and if just to totally switch that around. Yeah,
it's so true. And often it is the case where we're still stuck in that paradigm or that mindset that, oh, we have to work hard to get the life that we want. It doesn't come easy, or money doesn't grow on trees. That sort of beliefs that are very limiting, and we have that impression that we kind of have to suffer through life to make it worth. And when we learn that actually God wants us to live, like you said, an abundant life, a rich life, whatever that means to you, whatever form it takes for you. He wants us to be happy. He wants us to embody all these, really the fruit of the spirit, right? Like all these qualities that are holy and spiritual and loving, so that we can be a reflection of his son on earth, and that we can live our best life, like live to our fullest potential, so that he can use us to his purpose.
Yes, and another way I look at it is just pretend we're on a ship. We're leaving from California and we're going to Australia. So there's different levels of the ship. There's the cargo hold in the bottom, and the upper decks are the more luxurious, and that's where the beautiful, spacious living is. That's where you can enjoy life on the deck and enjoy the sunshine. And so we have a choice. We can we're all getting to the same destination, you could say. We may be all getting to the same destination, but we can choose to live in the dumps or in depression, anxiety, in the cargo hold, in that doom and gloom, or we can choose to experience the wonderful hospitality that God is offering us in the upper decks. But we have to liberate ourselves from our human ego and its programs, and we get stuck in our ego, and it limits us. And so once we can break free of our ego and its limiting beliefs, then there's a whole new world out there for us. And it's God wants us, he's got a feast prepared on the upper decks. He wants us to enjoy his son. 𝘗𝘓𝘓𝑠𝑢𝑛. You know, he literally wants us to experience. I'm just going to try and move this. There, this might be better. Sorry, everybody, but okay.
We get to see all your house.
Oh, well, it's just tough trying to find a spot where not right in the sun.
It is so beautiful, what
Okay.
you just said, and the analogy is great. I love it, and it's so true that we get to make a conscious choice how we get through life. Are we actually making it hard on ourselves, harder than necessary, or are we choosing to get the best out of life? And
Mhm.
it's really up to us, and God is making all of this available to us. It's just up to me to say, okay, this is what I want to create for me today. This is my reality from now on. And so these levels that you were mentioning in the boat they could be likened unto like levels of consciousness.
Yes.
And I really loved learning about consciousness. I myself practice body talk, which is a form of energy work that is consciousness based. And so learning about consciousness being everything is consciousness. In another word, source is consciousness. Like everything comes from consciousness. And it trickles down through all the levels of being, from the spiritual to the mental, emotional, and then the physical, which is the last level, which it manifests.
Mm-hmm.
So often we get stuck in that physical level and not realizing that there's something deeper that created our physical reality. And so if we can tap into those higher levels of consciousness, then it really makes us take quantum leaps.
Yes, exactly.
So what does it mean to you when we talk about the rise of consciousness, like the rise of consciousness of humanity and the general collective awakening of the planet that we've seen happening over the last few years, especially in the last couple years after all the big world's event with COVID and everything else that's happening right now? What does that mean to you?
Well, I think we are living in pretty exciting times.
Mm-hmm.
Even when we see the level of pedophilia that is being exposed, and it's being exposed in all levels of society. People are seeing it. It's being right from our politicians to Hollywood, our Hollywood elite, business elites, the government officials, church clergy, right down to the people next door, you know, and family. We're witnessing a huge awakening on the planet, even just to pedophilia, okay? And I believe that we are in a time of great awakening. And it's almost like God has said, enough is enough. And people are, and because, okay, so we might say, why now? Why not 100 years ago? Like pedophilia has been going on since the days of Baal, like in the Old Testament. And the corruption, the same thing. But even corruption on all levels are being, even what we're witnessing now in the world with all these wars, corruption is being exposed. And we're seeing propaganda. We're seeing how people were really controlled. And so as people wake up, the light is getting brighter and brighter. And then more and more is exposed. So it's like a positive cycle. So it looks worse because we're seeing it now. We never saw it before. We never saw the rampant pedophilia. We never understood the level of corruption in all the world governments. So now we are witnessing it because we're all waking up and the light is shining on it. So what was once hidden is now being exposed. So this is actually a time of rejoicing, even though we're seeing the worst of humanity. So we feel for victims. We feel for the ones who have been slighted. We feel for, and we're all going to go through mourning, I believe, but it's a necessary part of waking up. Not knowing, ignorance is bliss, right? I suppose some people think that, but now we know. So it's not pleasant. It's like a rude awakening. Mm-hmm. And there are still people, even in our own community, community, who are choosing to keep their head in the sand, so to speak. They don't want to hear about it. But I think all of us better just wake up. And because otherwise there'll be two in a bed. One will get up and one will be left.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's giving me shivers right now.
Yeah.
I do feel there's been so much grief, especially for me in the last year, just processing everything that's happening. And like you said, it's part of the journey. It's part of the process to purge all the darkness that's being brought to the surface, so that we can purge it, we can release it, and then ascend to a higher, deeper level of consciousness. So that brings me to talk about Christ consciousness, and that might be a new term for certain people. In the religious community, people would be more familiar with the return of Christ, right? So do you think that the planet, the humanity consciousness awakening and rising, do you think that is bringing on the return of the Christ, so to speak? We're ascending into a higher level of consciousness, which is going to bring the Christ consciousness, going to bring the return of the Christ.
You said it better than I could. This is a really tricky subject for a lot of religious people. I was raised the same way, to believe that the rapture or the return of Christ is that we would all just go flying in the air to meet him in the air, or our souls but you actually nailed it. As I would say, for the last few hundred years, we have been in 3D, three dimension. Okay, talking in terms of levels of consciousness, let's just say three-dimensional world, that what we see, like the five senses, what we hear, what we see, what we can touch, what we taste. What am I missing there? Yeah, so that would be the three-dimensional world. And but as we awaken, and as we tap into our inner wisdom, our inner guidance team, and as our faith increases, we come into the fourth dimension. So you could say when our spirituality is awakened, we come into the fourth dimension. And there's many that are there already who have a faith. And then I would say where we are right now on the planet is the majority of the people are going from 3D into 4D with all this awakening. So and it's not a pleasant experience. In some ways it's liberating, but it still hurts. It still hurts to see what we're seeing. But it's necessary. The exposure is necessary to awaken. So I believe that the Christ consciousness is at around 12th dimension, I think, somewhere around there. And we've got a ways to go yet to get to that level. But there are some that are in, I would say, even 6th dimension right now, who've got such a high level of faith, a high level of consciousness, that they're well on their way to intentionally creating their life. And their faith is, they're experiencing more of the love and the joy that God intended, like on those upper decks. There's still more decks to go. And but we're getting there. But there's a few hard knocks to go through first.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and like you said, it's the ego piece of it, that we're learning to detach ourselves from that 3 dimension, that level of consciousness that's very down to earth, very physical, very attached to things that we can sense with our five senses, like you said. And so it does feel like in that process, there's a lot of ego death that needs to happen. And in that dying process comes grief, because we have to say goodbye to, in a way, to things that we were attached to that we thought were important to us. But as we move forward and we look ahead, there's better things to come. And yet we have to let go of things that have been part of our lives, our reality for so long. And so in a way, the old system, the old paradigm, the old world is not working for us anymore, because the planet has already shifted in consciousness. It's already ready for, and it's just kind of waiting for all of us to upgrade to that 4D dimension of consciousness. And so the old paradigm, the old world is obsolete now. It's made obsolete. And so we have to look onto the new paradigm, the new world that we're creating, and which is exciting because there's a lot of possibilities and opportunities there. And really it's endless and unlimited. We put so much limit to our reality because we're so, we're limiting ourselves to the physical dimension of it, where beyond that, there's a huge realm of possibilities and opportunities, and just starting to tap into it and learning about levels of consciousness and how deep we can go into, it's just mind-blowing. And like you said, it's something inside of us. And it feels like there has been that paradigm as well, or that limiting belief that seek the answers outside of yourself. Like, take that pill, it's going to help you. Or go see that person, he's going to solve all your problem, and you'll be fine. Or buy that new workout program, or get this, do that. And we kind of spread ourselves thin, and we forget to focus inward where all the answers are, because God talks to us within us. And we had a study this week. We did a Bible study on what was it, Hebrews 8? Yeah, about God writing things on our hearts and revealing, putting things in our minds, right? So that's inside of us. It's personal. It's individual. And I don't know what's in your heart. Probably even your husband doesn't know what's in your heart. Right? I don't know what's in my husband's heart. And I can't read his mind either. He can't read my mind. But we have that personal, special link with God, with the source, with the highest consciousness that's ever existed, right?
Exactly.
That ever will be. And so to start looking inward instead of trying to find answers outside of us, then if we just tap a little more than we have before into that infinite source, just imagine the possibilities, right? It's endless. And that is exciting.
Yeah. And you did mention one thing about how to let go of ego, it can be painful. But it's good to remember too that it's our resisting that creates the pain. So some of us don't like change. So when we resist change, that's when the suffering happens. So it's as we turn from the ego, or as Jesus says, deny self, then there's liberty as we follow the Holy Spirit, or liberty as we follow our inner guidance team.
Yes.
And so Jesus said, deny self and follow me. And so that's what brings liberty. And all the answers, like you say, are within us. And it's as we choose to let go of these programs that have been running in our minds and in our thoughts for all our life, as we choose to let go of ego, self, and just tap into that liberty. And I like to think of Hosea's wife, Gomer. She was a prostitute before he married her. And so it says that God created a hedge of thorns for her so that if she stayed in the path, she would not know suffering. But if she turned to the right or turned to the left, she would hit the thorns. And then that would cause her pain and suffering as she went back to her old ways. She'd hit the thorns. And so that would create her pain and suffering. So as we stay in the path of flow, follow that inner guidance, there's not going to be pain and suffering. Sure, there won't be it's when we go to the right or go to the left, that's when we hit the pain and suffering. And so then we just have to realign ourselves back into the flow, because God has ordered our steps. And if we stay to his steps that he's ordered, then there will be flow and harmony.
Yes, I love this.
So
it's so beautiful, and I need to be reminded of this every day. And it feels like lately this has been my biggest lesson, to learn to let go of my resistance to life, really, and the process of life, and to just accept, which is the other side of it, just have a profound acceptance for the process of life, and to let go and let it flow. And when we do that, like you said, we free ourselves from suffering and pain that are so unnecessary. We don't need to be that way.
Yeah.
We don't need to live in stress or in pain and suffering. And so the key to that is just accepting our experiences, accepting the process of life, surrendering to it, which is hard. It is hard because we have to let go of that ego mind that wants to control and fight it and but when we do that, kind of how it speaks in the Bible about putting on the new man and letting go of the old man, right? We're putting on the new nature of Christ and letting go of the old human nature. And in a way, that's kind of what it means. Like, my ways are not God's ways. But if I tap into his ways, his source, then my ways are irrelevant, because my ways don't work anyways. It's just pain and suffering because it's resisting, it's ego based. But God's ways are love based, and love is accepting, is surrendering. It's it's flow. And that's where we want to be in. That's where we want to live from.
Yeah. And that you tapped on it about making decisions from that place of love. And we know, like, some people say, well, how do I know if it's ego or if it's God talking to me, or like our inner guidance team? God will always inspire us to do the right thing. And our ego, so we just have to look at Judas. So Judas betrayed Jesus, and in the end, he regretted it. He threw away the money, 30 pieces of silver, and he went and hung himself. So we could say that if he had tapped into his spirit guidance, then God would have led him back to Jesus for repentance. And that would have been his way out. God always provides an escape route out of any situation. But he allowed self-condemnation, which is ego, to take him out. He hung himself.
Judgment.
Yes, human judgment, self-condemnation. And Jesus did not come to condemn us. He came to set us free. So if we're feeling condemned about anything, that's not God. That's our ego. Our ego is saying, hey, look, you're a bad Christian, or, you're no good. No point in going to church tomorrow. Or, it's, God will always inspire us to do the right thing, and it will feel right. It will feel light. It will be spacious, and it'll seem like a a sense of relief.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas what is not true for us will feel heavy, it will feel dark. And that's how I gauge my life, is even when I'm reading the news and all these wars that are happening, because our soul is a piece of God. Okay, so our soul has access to all things, all knowledge, all wisdom. So if I see something on the news and it doesn't resonate, I just put it aside. Nope, that's not for me. And if I find myself fearing, then I know I'm on the wrong path, because
Mm-hmm.
that's ego. That is not, because we have two guidance systems. We have our ego, which is that guides us through this three-dimensional world. And then as we tap into our spiritual sense, we learn to tap into the divine. And then there's that guidance system. So one will make us feel light, one will keep us in this three-dimensional world. So
Mm-hmm.
Our gut feeling on something is usually our inner guidance.
Yes.
If we have a gut feeling about something, I mean, I could tell you all kinds of stories, but we don't have time for that. But yeah,
We have another conversation.
that'll have to be another conversation.
Yeah, which is what you're mentioning is intuition, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Intuition, gut feeling.
Mm-hmm. So
That's inner guidance.
And we all have it. We just
Mm-hmm.
have to relearn how to tap into it, how to listen to it, how to trust it.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a process in itself, because there is so much fear, which is ego-based.
Yes.
And it takes us away from that being in the moment, being in that intuitive, all-knowing moment, that and connection to source. And it's just so different to live your life from that perspective, rather than being in fear and ego.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, I just love how you put it. You also were mentioning, about the world awakening to truth, which I feel on a personal level, I've been on that journey as well, to come to truth that I didn't even know about before. And I would have, like, looking back, I've come a long ways, and
Mm-hmm.
so glad that these truths have been revealed to me. So as we're awakening to those truths for ourselves and about the world, and it's changing our worldview, things are coming up that are not so pleasant and that are very uncomfortable. Things that have been hiding in darkness for way too long, like most recently pedophilia, and it's on really all level. We're discovering that it's everywhere, and in a way we knew somewhat that it has always been there. I do feel that the fact that it's being exposed now more and talked about, it's revealing a level of darkness that we've never really been confronted to, and it's really hard for some of us, and it was for me too, still is sometimes, to face that, and there is grief that comes with it. But so what do you think about what's being exposed in the world today? And sometimes it's even closer than we think. Like I have family and friends that have been victims of pedophilia. And so how do we deal with this? I don't really like that expression, because it's as if we have to do something about it, but how do we process that heaviness?
Well, awareness is number one. Awareness. And it's as we are aware that we choose awareness, because so many are not choosing awareness. So many are denying that it's existing.
Mm-hmm.
See no evil, hear no evil. It's, but awareness is key. And then what comes with awareness is ascension. That we will ascend in consciousness with awareness. So it's part of the waking up process. So, and then as we ascend, we create differently. And so, so we tend to look at our own individual lives as separate from everybody else. Okay, so I know in the religious Christian world, it's about our salvation. It's about us getting our level of faith up there. But what happens when there is a collective awareness, and I mean even worldwide, I don't just mean in certain fellowship groups, when there is a collective worldwide awakening, then that is very, very powerful. So that alone creates new and different, because people are, as we're waking up and moving into higher levels of consciousness, we're coming more into God's love. Because if we say that, just in Christian terms, the more faith we have, because also what comes with that faith, like that's fruit of the Spirit, the more love we feel. So the more faith we have, the more love we'll feel. And then there is less tendency to commit crimes against children, or commit crimes of corruption, or to, so in effect, as we wake up, so does our level of consciousness rise, and we create different. Collectively, we are all one. People, it's very hard to understand that, but when Jesus said, "Give, and to you it shall be given." So as we bless others, it comes back to us. So everything that we send out there comes back to us.
Yes.
And he also said, you will reap what you sow. So what we send out there is what we'll create.
It also that what you do unto others is what you do unto yourself, or
yes.
do unto others like you would like to be done unto yourself, right?
Yeah.
So, and then was it the Lord that said, what you do unto the smallest one of you is what you do to me.
Yeah.
So even further, like if we hurt the smallest one of us, which is a child, it could be anyone really that we think is inferior to us or weaker or whatever, we do it to God. We do it to the heart of God. So that's very serious. And like you said, being aware and awareness is the first step to change, is the first step on a healing journey. And so to be aware of what's going on, you need to be informed. You need to be open to receive something that's different that you've known before, and change your view, open up your world, and from there you can move on to, okay, that's the problem, then we have to address it, and here are the steps to change the things. So when go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, and as we have that awareness, then we're not turning a blind eye, and we're able to recognize situations, and it's just the whole planet rises. The whole planet rises, and it's a different world. And who knows? Like, we don't really know God's timing, but who knows? God could be cleansing this planet for the new world that's coming. And I found it really interesting, something that I came, what was in our Bible study a few weeks ago. It was, well, what is Jesus' inheritance? What is God going to give Jesus as an inheritance? And it shocked me. I always thought, okay, it was heaven, but it's actually the nations of the world. And what is our inheritance? It's the meek shall inherit the earth. So maybe that's what's happening now. God is cleaning up the earth, preparing it for the new world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I like that.
I like to think
That
too.
resonates. That resonates.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so true. And so talking about the child and the children, because pedophilia affects children on a physical level, but we also know that, like you said, everything is connected, not just like between each one of us, we're all one, but also within ourselves, like the physical side of us is connected to the emotional, mental, and spiritual aspect of us. So how does such a huge trauma on a physical level affects all the other levels of being, the emotional, the mental? And we don't need to get into it in details, because I'm sure there's way more to say about it. But most importantly, how does it affect the spiritual being of a child, and stays there as a scar on their spirit and soul for the rest of their lives? And how do they heal from that? That's kind of a loaded question, but
yeah, that is, and it's really, I have to be careful how I answer this question because of the diverse audience. But we know that the mind, body, and soul is connected. Okay, and so what affects one affects the other. And there comes a time okay, so then there's the law of attraction. Where does this come in? Okay, where does this play into what's this pedophilia? So I've been working with a victim, and she has been victimized since she was 2 until she was 19. Okay, so it was that age of almost 17 years. But she came to an age of understanding. So you could say, maybe we could say that the experience of like at 2 years old, you've got no control over being raped, right? But there comes to be an age of understanding when her words are, I believed that this was my lot in life. This is what I believed inwardly, that I am to service people. And her last rape was when she was 19 years old. And she'll tell you, and now this is 30 years later. So, and she will say that I had to learn how to believe differently. The same thing our son went through. He had to create a new belief system. As a man thinketh, so is he. So she had to heal herself. So she learned to tap into that flow within. Meanwhile, all her life, she was on medications. But then there came to a time where she took 100% ownership. And that is when the healing begins, is when we say, okay, I'm going to recreate myself. So therefore, in order for me to have the power to do that, I can no longer blame anyone else for where I am. Because as long as I'm blaming, I'm a victim and I have no power. They have my power. So it's when we take back our power and we choose to heal, we choose to tap in, and we choose to create differently. And then and it takes years, then we gradually ascend, and then we're able to attract different experiences as we ascend. And so she will say to you, even today, she'll say, I had to take 100% ownership for where I was. This is once she got to the age of understanding, and that is different for each person. Okay, so and then when she made that commitment, she started her healing process. She learned to tap into that flow within her. She learned how to speak differently, how to think differently, and heal. And now she's at the place now. I had lunch with her, a few months ago, and she's at that place where I guess we'll use the word forgiveness. I know a lot of, that word is very offensive to a lot of people, but she has learned to forgive her abusers, not to free them, because her forgiveness has nothing to do with them, but it's to free herself.
Mm-hmm.
It's to free herself. So, and she's free. And then once we get into that space of love, which is that higher level of consciousness, then perfect love casts out fear.
Yeah.
Perfect love casts out hate. Perfect love casts out resentment. There's no way.
It even
Fear,
says,
yeah.
mm-hmm, it even says that love covers a multitude of sins, right?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's such a deep inner work, and I feel like it does take time and maybe a lot of inner work, and it's quite a process to reach that level. And ultimately, that's the point where we can be free of all trauma. And lately, not just talking about pedophilia, but I've realized that we all have some kind of trauma, depending on our perception of our experiences, our past experiences, and the ones that are still happening in our present. We all have some degree and level of trauma. And so to go through these stages of, okay, we have to be aware of what's happened to us, to acknowledge it, to face it, so that we can process it, we can heal it at a deep level, on all levels of being.
Mm-hmm.
And then reach that point where we're like, okay, now I've freed myself from all the pain and suffering, and I've accepted my experiences, and I surrender to that, and I forgive myself, and I forgive others, because really we're one. What we do unto others is what we do to ourselves. So I free myself, I forgive myself, I am safe, I love myself, I love others, and I respect the fact that we're all on a journey and we're all learning something. And that's such a hard pill to swallow for me sometimes, and for some. It's such a hard concept to accept, that I don't have to live in that victim mentality. I don't have to stay in that vicious cycle of blame, fear, and guilt, right?
Mm-hmm.
I can step out of that and step into love, for myself and for others. And if I create that world for myself, then by me doing that, I can help someone else create that world for themselves. And then together we're co-creators of our reality. And then together we can ascend into higher levels of consciousness. But it right now it feels like we're still stuck in that 3D physical realm of processing and dealing with all the darkness and all the deeds of the darkness that are being exposed. That's very painful, very traumatic, very difficult to deal with.
Mm-hmm.
And with that come a lot of emotions that we do need to feel. We do need to accept them and let them go. But how do we get out of that stage, which isn't a necessary stage that we go through, and we do have to go through that. But how do we go beyond that? How do we pass that moment of, I'm a victim, this happened to me, and how do we go into like, this actually happened for me, so that I could,
Okay, so that's what we haven't addressed yet, is that everything we go through is what we need to go through to get us to where we need to go.
Mm-hmm.
So how do we know if we should be going through something? Well, if you're going through it, then you need to. And it's not like God created your situation where somebody did rape, it's not that it's not that way at all. But it's more like God will use experiences, or we actually will have a choice to make. It ultimately comes down to we can use that experience, that horrible experience, as a justification for a life of misery, or we could use that experience as a propeller or to propel us forward in life. And I think of an elastic band, like a slingshot. It seems like the tougher our experience is, the further it's going to go ahead.
Yeah.
So, and God even says that. He says, I don't have the verse memorized it, but it says, if you have double the trouble, you will have double the joy. So God balances all that out. He will balance all that out. As long as we choose that. We have to choose that. We have to choose to go forward. We have to take ownership and of where we are once we get to that age of understanding.
That is so beautiful.
Yeah.
Some tough experiences are actually a catalyst for us to be able to transform into what we're meant to be, kind of like a caterpillar that transforms into a butterfly. That stage is necessary, and there is a dying process. But the result is totally different from where it came from. A caterpillar and a butterfly, you put them together and you'd never think it's one thing from the other. But the butterfly is so beautiful, and then it can fly. It's free. It's not attached to physical realm anymore. It's at a higher level, right?
Yes. And you look at the caterpillar, it can't leave the earth because it's still attached. So, and it devours as it goes across the leaf, it devours the leaf. But as a caterpillar, okay, so we could say, well, does it experience life? Well, yeah, it does, but it has attachments. It's stuck to the earth. Whereas we look at the butterfly, that's flying with the freedom of flight, and it pollinates as it flutters along. And does it experience life? Yes, we could say that the butterfly experiences life more abundantly. So, and that's what God wants us to do. He wants us to be on that top level of the ship. And it's just like this one fella who got on the ship to cross over to America. He saved all his money to get on that ship. And then he carried his cheese sandwiches and his craft, he brought his own food on board. And he sees all these people eating these beautiful meals. And here he's eating his craft dinner or his cheese sandwiches. And so finally, near the end of the journey, the maitre d', he says, why are you eating your own sandwiches? Why aren't you eating with everybody else, enjoying the beautiful dining? He says, well, because I can't afford it. He says, it comes with your ticket. And so all this time he could have been enjoying the beautiful upper decks, the feasts, but he felt unworthy. He didn't feel that was his lot.
Yeah, and you miss out. You miss out on life when you don't realize that you do have access to that infinite, abundant source, and it's just up to you. It's a choice away, and it's your choice. And so we can let life's experiences consume us, or we can choose to let them form us.
And rise above them. And to see them. And I know when a crazy experience happens in my life, I'll just kind of observe it. And when we can observe from the third person, that's a sign that we have an awareness. So I'm thinking, what am I supposed to learn from this? And that's, we kind of joke with our kids, they do that too. Like, whether it's some unfortunate thing happens, like somebody smashes into his car. Well, he's like, he phones me and he goes, Mom, like, what am I supposed to learn from this? Somebody just got me. Like they, what do they call that? T-bone me. And I says, well, you may not know now, but there's a reason.
Yes.
Everything happens for a reason. Well, it turns out, I won't go into the story, but he ended up getting his whole vehicle fixed, which he bought it and it wasn't fixed when he bought it. So he got the whole thing done. I mean, you come out ahead. Every experience we go through in life, we come out ahead. If we look at it, if we can stand back and say, hey, what can I learn from this?
Yes.
As
And
opposed to getting all emotionally involved.
yes, as opposed that this is happening. Why is this happening to me?
Yes. Yes. Why not me?
Yeah, and that is something I've tried to practice as
Yeah.
well. What is this supposed to teach
Yeah.
me? What am I supposed
Yeah.
to learn in this experience? And when we
Yeah.
come with that attitude, it changes everything.
Yeah.
Like,
and you might not know it for a while later, but that's what, that's another thing that I talk about in my book a lot, is send out questions out to the universe or out to source or out to God. Just throw questions out there, open-ended questions, and gratitude. And gratitude actually probably is one of the most important things I could even say in this talk today. Gratitude immediately shifts our energy. It shifts our level of consciousness. Even when you're out watching a sunset, you know, thank you, Father, for sharing this beautiful sunset with me.
Mm-hmm.
Like just something little like that will shift us. It'll just shift us even a little bit. And the more gratitude we give, I talk with my hands.
me too.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's so beautiful. And really that attitude of gratitude can transform every moment into something that is way beyond our expectations. And so imagine if we could go from that moment of forgiveness, which is already a huge step, to then stepping into gratitude, and even go further and say, I'm thankful that this happened to me so that I could go through that journey and that process, that I could learn and transform into that beautiful being that I am today. But to reach that level, that's like way higher than I am right now.
Well, and even something that somebody could say, that say they're not at that level of feeling gratitude. The fact is that gratitude is the ultimate state of receivership. So even when we voice the words of gratitude, even though we're not necessarily feeling it yet, even if we voice it, it just shifts us a little bit. And so, you know, instead of saying, Father, you know, instead of begging him in prayer to heal me, please heal me, something more powerful is thanking him for healing you. Thank him. So thank you, Father, that healing is on the way.
Which often our prayers are coming from a place of neediness. Please give me this because I don't have it. Instead, if we say thank you for giving it, because you already know that God is giving it to you because you have faith and you believe that you will, and it's already yours. And so you just thank God, like, thank God for this. I'm so grateful that this is mine already and this is happening and I am like that. Then it's done.
Yeah. And then you don't have to think about it anymore until it shows up. Now Jesus, he was a master at that. He always asked for what he always thanked God for what he was asking for. So, or in some of his most powerful miracles anyways, like when he raised Lazarus from the dead, he didn't say, Father, please raise Lazarus from the dead. He said, Father, thank you for hearing me. And then he raised Lazarus. There was no doubt in his mind. And same with when he gave bread, when he performed the miracle on the 4,000 and the 5,000. He didn't say, Father, please split out this bread to feed 5,000 people. He said, he just thanked Father for the bread that was going to feed all the people.
The difference is really like when you say, please do this, it's kind of coming from a place of doubt. You're not sure it's going to happen. You're not sure the person is capable of doing that. When you say, I'm thankful that you can do doing this, it means you already believe, you already know, you already have the faith that it's possible. And so it is. And so it happens.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. And it's the same thing. We tend to say, well, if it's God's will, but you know, there's times we can honor the times when we don't know if something is God's will. We can honor asking him if it is his will. But there are times when there's no doubt that it's God's will because of what he has said in the Bible. You know, Jesus died for our infirmities. Any sickness that comes to us is not meant to stay. It's meant to pass. And it's about us using that experience to rise higher in faith. So, you know, knowing what God's promises are is very helpful too. And believing them and coming from that place of belief versus that place of doubt.
Yes, absolutely. And coming back to gratitude and asking questions, that's a practice I've picked up over the years. Although I do still need to learn to be more consistent with it, because when I know when I do it, miracles happens, and when I don't do it, well, life is not as great. But having a practice of journaling and having a gratitude journal, and in my journals, I have often written questions, and then wait for the answer. And it will come through my intuition, from the source, from God, from consciousness, whatever you want to call it. It will come from your higher self, because it knows the answers, and it will come to you, and it will be given to you. And so the quality of your questions often impacts or changes the answer. So asking the right questions are good questions as well. And that's
that's powerful, asking questions, because it just opens all possibilities. But when we ask limited questions, it limits possibilities.
Yes, absolutely.
Like we can look at that woman who had no oil, and Elijah said, okay, go out and collect all the jars from your neighbors. And then he made the oil, he poured the oil, and then it stopped when the jars stopped. So I believe that if she had gathered more jars, there would have been more oil. But what's manifested stops where our faith stops. It's what we believe stops. So when we ask open-ended questions, it's not limiting God.
No.
And here's another thing: our judgments limit God. Our statements limit God.
Our beliefs, our thoughts, like what we think is possible. We often limit the power of God because we are limited in our own thinking and what we know is possible. When if we would just open ourselves to all possibilities and all opportunities, then really the answers are limitless, and we can avail ourselves of way more than we ever expected or ever thought could be possible.
Oh, yes. Yep.
To come back to child abuse, there is a phrase that you've mentioned, and I'd like to know more about it and what you meant by that. So you talked about restoring the child into our midst when it comes to exposing pedophilia and child abuse and trauma that's happened. What does that mean, restoring the child into our midst?
Okay, so so Matthew 18:2, and Jesus, they're wondering who is the greatest, and the disciples were wondering who was the greatest in heaven, in the kingdom of heaven, and Jesus called the little child and set him in the midst of them. And he said, verily I say unto you, except ye be converted and become as little children, you shall not enter into the kingdom of heaven. Whosoever therefore shall humble himself as this child, the same is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven. So this is the part that that's very powerful. And whoso shall receive one such little child, it receiveth me. So if we don't receive the child, we don't receive Christ. So, or there's no way we can ascend, okay, to that level of consciousness. So, so pedophilia is defiling the child, or what's another word we can say? It's devouring the child. So, and we see it happen in clergy. I mean, there's no excuse for clergy, we could say, because like whether it be priests, whether it be pastors, whether it be overseers, or anybody who preaches the gospel, because they know this verse, and the child is highly esteemed. The child is highly esteemed to God. And so that is what Satan is going to use to get at God. And so to defile the child, is not receiving the child and is not receiving Christ. And there's many people who believe that, oh, well, it's just my human nature. But, you know, the human nature God gave humanity is to love children, is to protect them, is to take care of them. So we can't use human nature as an excuse for that. It's none other than Satan. It's those dark forces, our enemy. And so part of the cleanup of pedophilia, it's happening worldwide, and the child, it won't be cleaned up until the child is restored. That's what I believe, because as we go into the new world, the new earth, there's going to be full restoration. All these dark forces will be gone.
Yes, and wow, that is sending shivers down my spine. It's so true, and it's actually heartbreaking, but it's so important to be aware of what's happening so that we can be part of the solution, part of that new world. And yes, it says in the Bible, it was predicted that the end times, like, things are going to get worse. Like, Satan is just getting stronger in a way, because he knows he's losing anyways. He knows Christ is back. He knows God is all powerful, and God is the big winner of this whole thing in the end. So yes, there is bad, dark things happening and coming up, but to just value that, or see that a child is the most precious thing in God's eyes, and that is the thing that Satan has used and is still using to get back at God and to hurt the heart of God. And like you said, we all have a part of God in our own soul. And so yes, it is hurting us as well. And so the question is, if it's not affecting you, well, where's your soul? Where's your spirit? Right?
Yeah. And there's two things I feel like we're looking at it on a bigger level. There's two things I feel that Satan is working on right now. And it's the souls of men, like souls of humans, and the children. Because I believe the war that we're witnessing now is not against two countries or even the Ukraine, Russia. Like, I don't think the war is them versus us, like specifically countries, but it's good versus evil.
Yeah.
And it's God versus Satan. Like, I mean, there is a war happening now for the souls of man and for the children.
Yes, and it's always been a spiritual war.
Yeah, it's a spiritual warfare that we are witnessing, and we can't get caught up in the propaganda on the news, because we know that the war has already been won. Like, we know, the Bible tells us that in Revelation. So Babylon will fall. Babylon is falling. Religious Babylon is falling in Revelation 17. Okay, and that's where we are now, is we're witnessing the religious structures of the world all over. The Vatican, the whole works. The religious structures are falling. And the political, social structures are falling, and that's Revelation 18. But we know the winner. We know the winner, and it tells us that Babylon's going to fall and God will win. So we don't need to get emotionally involved in all this that's going on, because we know God wins.
Yeah.
And it's almost like watching when you know the end of the score at the end of the game, and then you watch the rerun. Well, you don't get all worked up in the bad ref calls because you know your team won. So you just observe. You observe the game knowing that your team won. And you could say, if you want to really confuse your viewers, we could say that the war has been already won in the eternal now, in the one eternal now, because that's all God knows is the one eternal now. Everything happens in the now. The past nows are gone. The future nows aren't here yet. So everything, when we want to connect with God, it's in this present moment. Everything happens in this moment. So in that one sense, we could say the war has been won on a higher dimension, and we're just catching up. As we're rising in consciousness, we're catching up to that. So it's pretty powerful to think about, you know, but if you're hearing this for the first time, it's probably like, oh my goodness.
Yeah, it might take some time for some people to process all of this.
Yeah.
But for those who already know, they know. And I just resonate 100% with that and agree totally. Yeah. And it's so easy to get caught up in that daily struggle and the emotions and the thoughts, and we need to experience that as well. That's part of our life here on earth. But to be able to take that step back, and like you mentioned, being the observer of our own life, and in the lives of others as well, and without judgment, without fear, without worry, and just accepting that this is what it is, and I am a co-creator in this. I get to choose what I do with this, how I take what it's been given and turn into something beautiful, turn it into something that can be to my advantage, but not in an egoistic way. Yeah. But turn into my advantage, as in like, so I can make the best out of it for myself and for others as well. Be of service to others in that.
Right. Well, okay, so kind of how I look at that too is God looks, you could just say, God sees if something flows through us and we pass it on to others, well, then God's going to give us more. And that's abundance of all types. If it should just flow through us. But if it stops here, we're not going to get any more. We have to make room for more. Yes. So it's got to come through us and pass on to others. And so love comes to us. And even asking for abundance, to help out others in need. I mean, if it comes through us and goes on to others.
Yes.
God's going to say, here's a vessel I can use.
Yes, exactly. And this is a saying that my dad often used to say, and that's kind of stayed with me. It's a Bible verse that mentions there's more joy in giving than in receiving. Mm-hmm. And exactly in that sense that, of course, everybody loves receiving. But we want to receive so that we can give back. And so there's even more joy in giving it back in any way we can than just receiving and just like gathering and what's the term for it?
Hoarding. Well, and that's the thing too, is giving cheerfully. My son jokes, he was at the airport one day and he's a struggling university student, and you go to the airport, you got to pay this $40 airport fee tax. What? And he's ready to grumble. Then he thought, if I just give cheerfully, then that would be better energy, And so he just switches it up, So it's having that awareness, but it's not to give so that you can get, but it's to give without expectations. Yeah. But then it's a tricky one, because it's when we give without expectations, that's when we receive too. So it's a tricky one.
Yeah, the expectation part is a huge one. Yeah. And often it's hard to know how to apply that theory, because the theory is great, and I agree 100%. And maybe that's what your next book will be more about. But how to apply this in practical, in our daily life, in that everyday moment of like something arises, an experience comes up, and I know the theory, but how do I do it? How do I apply it in the moment and turn things around?
Yeah. Well, just something really crazy happened one day at the airport. I was flying back from BC and get to Edmonton, and there was a massive wait up for the WestJet bus, the bus that takes you to the parking lot, or the parking jet bus. And everybody was upset because they waited so long. And I felt so bad for the driver. everybody else called in sick. So I just gave him a $5, like, sorry, everybody's so mean to you. And so he thanked me. And then I go to get out of the parking lot, and I had paid for the plug-in parking because it was the middle of winter here. And she goes, I'm not going to charge you for your plug-in parking. So I was out $5 for the tip, but she saved me $14 with the plug-in parking. She just waived that. So, I mean, things like this in life happen, you know?
Yeah,
little things that don't mean much, but it's just having that idea of giving and compassion, and then that breeds the same thing back to you.
And really, to speak in Bible terms, when you're faithful in the little things, then you're able to be faithful in the bigger.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Okay, well, this has been awesome, Lori. I have a few more questions for you before we let you go. And they're more general questions, and they're questions I'd like to ask all the people that come on here, although you're the first one. But I will ask all the next guests. So what is your definition of living a fulfilled life?
Well, I would, like, without hesitating, I would say it's living in that space of love, and where you are a co-creator with God on your life, and you can live in that space of joy, abundance, selflessness, and yeah, that would be it in a nutshell.
Absolutely. And if you could give yourself, your younger self, a piece of advice, what would it be?
Trust your gut. Don't worry about expectations of other people on your lives. Just follow your gut, your intuition, your feeling of what is right. What's true for you will always feel light. What is not true for you will always feel dark and heavy. And that's kind of my measuring stick in everything I do, whether it's, you know, making a life decision, or whether it's something simple like buying something. Yeah. Or yeah, maybe not what's for dinner, but it's more like, you know, just, should I buy this or this? Like even vitamins, you know, like you're looking at vitamins. Oh, should I buy this or this? Well, whichever one resonates, you know, it's just a life test, I guess, I use for all aspects.
And I love that advice because I've used it since you mentioned it. I think it's even in your book. I've used it many times. I think I was doing that previously without knowing, but just like consciously understanding the process and consciously applying it daily, it really can change your life. How would you define God?
I would say God is everywhere. He is a supreme frequency of love. So kind of a little way I describe it is, he's like, let's just picture an octopus. God is like the octopus and we're his tentacles, okay? So God is within all of us. And God is everywhere. This is his creation. And so anything we create, we co-create with God. And so even just the fact of, well, I'll just sit this one out and let God take care of it. Well, God is within each of us. God doesn't use a magic wand. We're his wands. People are his wands. We all have a piece of him inside us. So these people that choose not to take a stand on anything, they're falling for everything, you know, like they're not, it's not Christian-like to not take a stand when it comes to good and evil. Because then you're saying that God is not within me. Yeah. And we're saying, I'm not going to be used by God. I choose not to be used by God is basically what we're saying.
And also, you know, in the Bible, it speaks about being nor warm nor cold. Like you're kind of lukewarm in the middle
Yes.
because you're not sure. You don't really want to take a stand either way. What did God say about these people? He will spew them out of his mouth.
Spit them out of my mouth. Right. Yeah. No, but I do look at God as a frequency of love. Like it's a space of love. And the higher we ascend, the more, you could say, close we come to him. And I like to call him God or Father. I know some people call him universe or source, and he's all of that. But it's whatever people feel comfortable with.
Yeah, whatever
you
can relate to.
Right.
What is the ultimate purpose of life?
I would say it's increasing our faith. And it's increasing our faith, increasing our level of consciousness, and to understand it's to evolve. It's to evolve. To evolve spiritually, and to come into greater faith, come into greater love. And
yeah, that's beautiful.
You probably have a better answer.
Well, that's a very good one. All answers are good. Yeah. I think to come back to that idea of being stuck in the victim mentality versus feeling empowered or being empowered and living as a sovereign being. Maybe that's part of the purpose of life as well. There's not just one purpose. Maybe individually, each one has their own purpose. So maybe that answer will be different for everybody, and will be. But come back to that concept of living as a sovereign being and being empowered. I think that's also part of the purpose of life for each one of us, to realize that we don't have to stay stuck in the victim mentality, which means staying stuck in ego, staying stuck in the fear and doubts and worries and guilt and shame and all that comes with it, and to step into our sovereign being, which is our God-given nature, our spiritual nature within our soul, that allows us to be empowered, to take our power back. And yes, we're still guided spiritually by a higher power, by the spirit, but we're also taking ownership and realizing that I get to decide. I have the freedom of choosing what I want for my life, what I'm creating for my life. And in being that person, the options are endless. Like, really, what's next, right?
Yes, exactly.
Like, and that's where faith comes in. Like, I don't know how things are going to happen or unfold in my life. I just know I want to be in that frequency. I want to be operating from that consciousness. I want to be that person so that God can use me, and then through me, a wonderful work can happen in my life and in the lives of others that I come in contact with, because I want to be of service. And I think that's, for me, part of the purpose of life as well.
Yes, exactly. And I like what you said, that it's every person, it's different. Like God has a path, or we tap into it, into that, the God within us, our soul. We tap into our soul guidance, and that is the path. I like to think of the oak tree. Now the acorn seed has the blueprint of itself within it as to what it will become. And it doesn't matter what, as that seed grows, it doesn't matter what experiences that tree goes through. Like down in the deep south, there could have been slaves hung on those trees from the times of the Civil War. But that doesn't change the blueprint. And the tree just grows gracefully into what it's meant to be based on the blueprint within. And we also have a blueprint. And we may say, well, why don't we grow gracefully like the oak tree? Well, it's because we have ego. Okay.
Yeah.
So we have the human, which always tries to hold us back from our blueprint purpose. So it's when we can do as Jesus said and deny the ego, deny the self, then we will be well on our way to that blueprint manifestation.
Yes.
It's actually beautiful if we could just learn to deny self, deny the ego thoughts, ego programs, how we were raised, society, education, and even traditional legalism in churches. Like we get programmed and it limits us. And I think the purpose of life too, you could say, is learning the power that we have within us. We've been dumbed down over the last several hundred years. But we see our potential is greater. And even Jesus said, you think I do miracles, you have the potential to do the same miracles as we rise in faith, right?
Yes.
As we rise in faith. So we have to rise in consciousness too, and the possibilities are endless.
Yes. I love this.
Like was it Elijah that decided, oh, let's stop the rain or let's start it, there's no end to possibilities as we rise in faith. I mean, in the three-dimensional world, no, we need doctors. We need all these so-called
chemical
medicine. Yeah.
Yeah.
But as we rise in consciousness, we're going to need less and less and less of the interventions around us, and it'll all be within.
Yes, I love this. It's so true.
Yeah.
So true. How can people get in touch with you and learn more about your work?
Well, I have a website, LoriKostenuk.com, and you'll probably put a link under there at the bottom. Yeah. And you can reach out to me on that site. They could, your readers or viewers could send emails or a message to me or phone me. I'll give them myself. We'll chit chat. I love to chit chat. And there's I guess as far as the book goes, there's Amazon and I guess the publisher has some, but my website will take them to that. So yeah.
When can we expect your next book then?
Probably in 2024, maybe towards the end of the year.
Yeah.
Because once I get it to the point I take it to the editor, then that's a 6 months process. So probably towards the end of 2024. Yeah.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah. So
all right. Do you have a final message that you want to share with us today?
I guess what I would say to all your viewers is just to truly tap into your power within you. The power is endless. And when you think of the connection we have with God, even within us, and tap into that, it's powerful. I mean, we can dumb it down and maybe have a total seared conscience, and we don't even realize that the power is there. But as we are open and we push ego programs aside, programming that, oh, well, God doesn't care about the human body, or God doesn't care about anything natural. I think that's the biggest limiting factor to moving forward, is to have God in a box. I'll take God down for Sunday mornings. I'll take God down for this or for that, or when my son is dying, then I'll take him off the shelf. But to invite God into our everyday experience and everyday decisions. God cares about what school your children go to. God, if it means something to you, if you care, well, then God will care. So invite him into your day. Talk to him out loud. Ask open-ended questions. And don't look for answers. Just let them come at the time that they're meant to come. So, I mean, it could take, and our level of faith and belief that he can, and he will, that determines how soon our prayers can be answered as well.
Yes,
by our
absolutely.
level of faith that,
Mhm.
so if we don't have much faith, if we don't believe our prayers are going past the ceiling, then they're probably not. But
Mhm.
if we get up from that place of prayer and say, thank you, God, for hearing me, well, then you can be rest assured he heard you,
Yes.
So.
That makes me think about one of Louise Hay's book. I love her work, really. The Power is Within You. That's probably my second favorite book. Actually my third.
Oh.
Um, yeah, she has another book,
Yeah.
which was the first book I read on my healing journey. You Can Heal Your Life. I also
Okay. I have that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a must-read go-to. The other
So,
one is Power is Within You, and it talks about that.
so Louise Hayes from Hay House, she is my publisher.
Oh,
So yeah, like from the Balboa Press is a division of Hay House. So yeah. So I've got a few of her books as well.
yes, she is
So.
definitely a big one.
Mhm.
And she did change the way I approach my healing journey for sure.
Yeah, and I still refer to her. You Can Heal Your Life. She's got that little
Yes.
handbook, and I still refer to that.
Yeah, the reference book is so good.
Yeah.
And the affirmations, I've done the affirmations so many times. I still do them often when I need to readjust my thinking and just affirming with gratitude things that maybe you don't believe about. Like, I am safe, I am loved, I accept myself.
Yeah.
All is well in my world. I trust the process of like all these things. Like, she has beautiful affirmations that are linked to like ailments and pains and aches and stress that you have in your own body, and you can link those. It's so cool.
Yeah, it's really good. And I also use my driving time, like when you drive to and from work or drive to and from town, I use my driving time to chit chat with God.
Yeah.
And you just have a conversation and thank him for everything. Even just the drive, even the sunny day, even just the beautiful things around you. And it's kind of cool how the more you thank him, the more you'll have to thank him for. It's a positive cycle. Yeah. So
that's so true. So beautiful. Well, thank you so much, Lori. I know we could speak for many more hours. We always do when we get together, or when we pitch chat.
Yeah.
But I do have to let you go now. This has been wonderful. Thank you so much for your time. And I can't wait to share this with my audience. And
well, thank you.
We'll have another chat soon.
Yeah, we'll do, Laura. No doubt we'll be chit-chatting to each other.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah.
Okay, bye-bye.